Hi, fifth grade. Happy Tuesday. It is day 2 of virtual school, and I miss you guys a lot already. I hope you're being really helpful to your parents. I hope you're being sweet to your siblings. I'm sure you are. And I hope that you're not too bored. I'm going to read to you the next section of our new book, As Brave as You. Today we're going to read pages 16 to 30. So far, we've been introduced to some of our characters. It seems like our main characters are two brothers named Ernie and Jeannie. It seems like Ernie is the older brother. He does karate. He's really cool and wears shades in the car. And then Jeannie is the younger brother. Jeannie, we learned, has a notepad where he records all of his questions that he has about the world that he wants to go and Google later, and with hopes that he'll be really, really, really smart. So we think he's pretty curious. And I like knowing that because he's using Google, in my brain I say, okay, so is this book from 1970? No, it seems like this book is more recent. Now, we learned in the first 15 pages that these two boys are having a little bit of an adventure summer. They are spending a month at their grandparents' house in the country in Virginia. The boys originally live in Brooklyn, which is a neighborhood in New York City. It's actually the neighborhood that Mr. McDonough is from, so that's kind of cool. And they're staying with their grandparents. This is what I would say. Who can tell me why they're staying with their grandparents? And then I would call on Bryn, and Bryn would say, they're staying with their grandparents because mom and dad have been fighting, and they want to have some time to go to Jamaica and to work out things. Jeannie says that he's concerned that they might possibly be getting a divorce. So we know that that's some conflict and some mystery that's going to be coming up as we read. As we read today, I want you to be comfy and cozy. I want you to have your book in front of you and to be annotating along. Please make sure that you circle new and important words. It's more important now than ever that you are the person in charge of your education. However much work you put into school while we're out of the building, that's how much you'll get out of it, okay? And I know that all of us ready are hopeful to be successful in 6th grade next year. Reading along with me is a top way to get there. We are starting today on page 16. Where it says, we made it, everybody out. So we're going to be right here on page 16, and I'll read along with you. If you need to pause to annotate, if you need to pause to go eat a piece of cheese or something delightful, please do that, but then please remember to come back and continue watching me read to you. Or if you really want, you could just read it to yourself or read it to a younger sibling. It's up to you. Here we go. We made it. Everybody out, Dad said, and by the time all the car doors had opened and Dad had popped the trunk, a light outside the house had flickered on. The front door opened and a shapeless shadow filled the doorway, like some kind of ghost. The dogs, the trees, and the little house all alone on the top of a hill. This, Jeannie thought, was definitely the makings of a scary movie. A kind of scratchy but firm voice called out, Sam, stop all that darn yapping. It was the same kind of scratchy, firm voice that Jeannie recognized from all of those 3-minute, twice-a-month phone calls that were always about how he was doing in school and if he was taking care of his brother and his mother, which always confused him because he was the youngest person in the family. It was Grandma's voice. Now, Grandma stepped onto the porch and closed the screen door behind her. It was a darker shade of dark outside than Jeannie was used to, but he could still make out the flowers on Grandma's long dress. Why do you guys think that it was darker at night in Virginia than it would be darker at night in New York City? Our scientific minds, why would that be? The answer, guys, is because of light pollution. When you live in the city, the lights from the streetlights and the buildings make it so it doesn't get as dark as it does in the country. When we go to North Bay this summer, you'll experience this. It gets even darker outside so that the lights, the stars shine even brighter and you can see them even more clearly. All right, so that's just a way that the author's telling us they are in the country, way different from a city. Dad nodded to Jeannie and Ernie to get moving and led the way. lugging the family suitcase to the top step of the porch. He set it down and wrapped his arms around the old lady tight. "Hey, Mama." "Lord," she said, kissing him on the cheek and then reaching out for Ma. "Took y'all forever to get here." "You know how your son is," Ma said, giving Grandma a quicker hug, then swinging around to make sure Jeannie and Ernie were right behind her. 5 miles over the speed limit is against the doggone law." Ma shook her head like she was annoyed at Dad, but a look Jeannie saw all the time at home. But Jeannie didn't really understand this time, because, well, 5 miles over the speed limit was against the law. Jeannie let his mother take his hand as she pulled him forward. Ernie hung back. Well, can you blame me for that one, sugar? I'm the safe one in the family," Grandma said. "Now come on in, let me look at y'all," she continued, excited as she opened the door wide. "Right this way." Inside the house was just as dark as outside until Grandma finally flipped a switch. A dim, yellowy light came on that made everything look like a smartphone picture with a vintage filter on it. They were in an old kitchen with a peeling sea green wallpaper, a school bus yellow fridge buzzing as loud as a laundromat washer. Guys, that paragraph is an incredible example of what we learned in Esperanza of imagery and figurative language. You look in, there's so much description in that paragraph that we could close our eyes and we could picture ourselves being in Grandma's kitchen instead of, well, for me, I'm in my own kitchen, but it feels like I'm there. Look at how it talks about it. It's like a smartphone vintage filter. It talks about what color the green was, what color the yellow was, and giving you the sound that you can hear of that buzzing fridge. Close your eyes for a second and you can picture that you're there. Did you do it? Did you close your eyes? Mason? No? Okay, let's keep reading. Grandma's face was slightly wrinkled, but still looked like Dad's around the eyes. That was all Jeannie could see of her face, because everything else was covered up by the flowered gown that looked more like a bedsheet with a hole cut in for her head to go through than an actual nightdress. "Line up and let me see," Grandma directed as they shuffled around on the plasticky floor. "That city's beating on you, ain't it?" she said, sizing Dad up first. "Mama, I've been up since 9 yesterday morning," he explained, sounding irritated and tired. I know," she said, patting him on the belly. "At least you eatin' well up there." Then she turned to Ma. "Thank you for feeding him, dear." "My pleasure, Mama." "And look at you, my sweet daughter-in-law," Grandma said with a little oomph in her voice while checking Ma out head to toe. "2 kids and still look like you in grade school." Ma bit down on her bottom lip for a second before letting herself smile. A little bit of attention goes a long way, Jeannie noticed. He also thought that Grandma was a liar. He had known lots of girls in grade school, and most of them looked way better than Ma as far as he was concerned. Especially Shelley. Who remembers who Shelley is? Miley? That's right. Shelley is Jeannie's girlfriend. Great job. "And look at this cool guy," Grandma said, moving down the line to Ernie, who, of course, had his sunglasses on. "Ernie!" Ma barked between clenched teeth. Ernie snatched the sunglasses off quick. "Oh, it's okay. How are you, Ernie?" Grandma said, giving him a kiss on the cheek. "Fine," Ernie muttered. Ma's mad eyeballs were all over him. "And check out this one here, getting so big." Grandma finished up putting her hand on Jeannie's head. "You remember me, Jeannie?" She wrapped her arms around him. He could smell the soap, the same soap that he remembered her by, the same kinds that his mother used. After lineup, Grandma herded them down a set of stairs. Ernie, Jeannie, Ma, and Dad all in one room with 2 big old beds. Ma and Dad conked out quick. No surprise since they had been driving all night. Ernie fell asleep right after them because, well, he never had a problem sleeping. It didn't matter if it was in a car or in a strange house. Ernie was going to find a way to catch some Z's. But not Jeannie. He couldn't get comfortable. He wasn't in his bed, or in his house, or even his city. He just lay still in the dark on a mattress that stank of old, sad socks. A mattress so thin he could feel the springs in his back, like lying on a bed of fists. And to make it even weirder, it was crazy quiet. No police sirens, no loud music, no couples arguing outside of his window on the street. No Hungry's cat, whose meows for some reason always sounded like babies crying. Only sound besides Ernie's snoring was about 1,000,000 crickets and 1,000,000 frogs playing Pete and repeat with the crickets. No way was he ever going to get to sleep. No way. When morning came, along with the brightest sunlight ever, and the smell of eggs and bacon coming through the cracks of the wooden floor, mixed with the smell of Ernie's big toe, which was way too close to Jeannie's nose, Jeannie woke up. Guys, do you see how you can feel and smell all of the things being described in this book? This is a beautiful imagery and figurative language that makes it so we could really close our eyes and watch a movie of these scenes going by. Also, Ernie's big toe, why is it so close to Jeannie's nose? Brothers never understand. He must have fallen asleep after all. Ma was already up, the bed that she and Dad had slept in already made as if they had never been in it, and on the end a colorful blanket was tightly trapped between Ma's chin and chest as she folded the bottom. She had taught Jeannie how to fold like that at home. He still hadn't gotten it down, but she was a master. "Good morning," she sing-songed, making one more fold, then setting the blanket on the edge of the bed, a perfect rectangle. "Sleep okay?" Jeannie, noticing the bags under his mother's eyes, wanted to ask her the same question, but instead just nodded and slipped out from under Ernie's leg. He thought Ernie was asleep, but then he felt his brother shaking from giggling. "Hey, Jeannie, what my toe smell like?" Ernie busted out laughing from under the covers. "Smell like your butt?" "Jeannie!" Ma snapped. He sat up just as Ernie tried to shove him off the bed with his knee. "Stop," Jeannie said, pushing back, trying not to fall. "Ernie, cut it out. It's too early for..." Guys, Mr. Todd's here. Weird. "It's too early for this," Ma warned. "What? I'm just playing with him." Ernie reached for his sunglasses, which he had set carefully on the floor beside the bed the night before. Ma gave him the "don't you dare" look. Does anybody else's mom make that look? I'm familiar with it. "Come on, Ma. It's stupid bright in here," he protested, sliding the shades on. Cool. The windows didn't have curtains or blinds, so the sun just poured in. It bounced off the wood floor and the yellowy walls, making the entire room seem orange. Almost seemed like they were on the inside of the sun. The room was crammed full with things, old things, like posters of baseball players and crazy-looking wedgie shorts, a faded calendar on the wall from 1985, Back to the Future themed. A dresser with navy blue paint peeling off like the skin on someone's nose after they'd been in the sun too long. There were also some medals and ribbons there, a folded up flag, and a small red truck, an old school fire engine on top of the dresser. Jeannie hopped off the bed for a better look. "Watch for splinters, son," his mother warned as he walked over the gapped wooden slats to the dresser. The red truck, he realized, was a model. All the details, the ladder, the side mirrors, perfect. Even better than he could. Dang, he had left his models back home, and Ma had just bought him 2 new ones, especially for this trip. Double dang. He had just reached out to pick up the red truck when Grandma yelled from downstairs, "Rise and shine, babies. Breakfast is ready." The boys and their mother followed the smell of food down the shaky wooden steps to the kitchen doorway. Grandma was standing over the stove, flipping bacon with a fork. The grease popped every time she poked the bacon, but she never flinched. An old man, Grandpop, sat at the rounded kitchen table. He had on a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and, like Ernie, dark glasses. His face had that look old men get when they shaved the day before and the beard was just starting to grow back. White specks of dust all over his cheeks. "Come in here and say hi to your grandfather," Grandma said, setting the fork on the counter and stirring something in a copper pot. She nodded to Jeannie and then at the empty chair to the right of the old man for Jeannie to sit in. Ernie sat in the one across from him. Ma sat next to Ernie, completing the circle. Ernie spoke first. "Hi, Grandpop." "Ernie, the almost birthday boy," Grandpop grinned, holding out a huge hand. "Been a month of Sundays, son. Long time no see." Jeannie wasn't sure what a month of Sundays meant, but he figured Ernie must have known because he reached out a hand and gave Pop a 5. That voice. Jeannie recognized it too from the phone calls. Grandpop was the one who would always ask if Jeannie was taking care of his father, which made it seem to Jeannie that his parents expected him to take care of, that his grandparents expected him to take care of everybody. Ernie nudged Jeannie, urging him to speak. "Hi," Jeannie said softly. "Jeannie," Grandpop put his hand out again. "Nice to finally meet you." Jeannie went to give him a high five, but Grandpop caught his hand, clamped down on it like a mousetrap on a mouse, and shook it hard and tight. Tight enough to make one of Jeannie's eyes close up. Tight enough to almost make him ask, "What's your problem?" "The first one is always like this." Grandpop leaned in close enough for Jeannie to smell him. A mix of sweet and sweat, and he lowered his voice into an almost whisper. "But now that we know each other, all the rest'll be 5s. And he grinned big. His teeth were like Dad's and Ernie's. Perfect. White. Speaking of Dad, Jeannie wondered where he was and when he was going to show up and save him from this white-toothed crazy man. With Grandpop still clutching his hand, Jeannie peered around, looking for his father. "Leave that boy alone, Brooke," Grandma said, slapping the old man on the shoulder, setting a plate full of breakfast food in front of him. Grandpop released his grip and Jeannie, happy to finally have his hand back, massaged his fingers. Grandma must have noticed Jeannie's nervousness because she asked, "Who you looking for? Your daddy? He outside. Be back in a minute." She kissed Grandpop on the cheek and then dodged him as he swatted at her butt on her way to the counter for another plate. Her silver hair was wound up into a bun on the top of her head. Twins. And her flowered nightdress was much prettier in the daytime. So was she. The next plate was Jeannie's. Eggs, bacon, toast, and some globby white stuff that must have come from that pot that Grandma had been stirring. Looked like movie prison food. Guys, what do you think that this is? They're in the South, and there's a white, globby, creamy food being put on their plates. It's grits. Yum. Grandma beamed. "Hope you boys like grits." Ma laughed. "They don't know what grits are, Mama Harris, but they're going to try some today." Jeannie stuck his fork into the white slime and hoped it didn't taste like peas. Peas were the one thing he hated to eat more than anything. This stuff wasn't green, so that was a good sign. He let the gritty goo slip between the tines of the fork and plop back down onto his plate. He looked at his brother. Ernie seemed just as worried, but lifted the fork straight to his mouth and tasted it anyway. Ernie was brave like that. He made a face like the white stuff, the grits, was good, so Jeannie tried it too. "Tastes like sand," Jeannie blurted, not quite wanting to spit it out, but not wanting to swallow it either. He just wanted to let it sit there in his mouth until it dissolved. Jeannie! Ma hated when he said stuff like that. At the same time, she was always after him to tell the truth. And the truth was, to him, the grits tasted like he was eating sand. Sand? Grandpop asked, looking amused. Well, I got something for that. He pushed his chair back just as Grandma finally sat down and went over to the counter where there were 3 coffee cans. Popping the top off the middle one, he stuck his fingers in it and closed it back up. He returned to the table and sprinkled something on the top of Jeannie's grits. Try now. What was that? Jeannie asked, worried. Magic dust, Grandpa grinned, a little less creepy this time, and then sat back down. Try it. What was that? Oh, I already read that. Sorry, guys. Jeannie picked up his fork and touched it to his tongue, just enough to taste. Sugar! And yeah, now the grits were so much better. Grandma was looking intently at Jeannie, her head tilted, like she was trying to figure something out. You know who else who didn't like grits unless they had sugar on them? She asked. Uh-huh. Wood, Grandpop said. He'd been stabbing his eggs with his fork, but stopped suddenly, as if eating them was getting in the way of thinking. Wow, that's something, ain't it? Uncle Wood? Jeannie piped in. Eat your breakfast, his mother commanded. That's like a strange change in tone. Everyone's chilling and having fun, and now his mother's commanding him to do stuff. Sounds like this Uncle Wood guy has some kind of history attached to him that's making his mom get upset. Your grandfather got it all sugared up for you. Please don't have my son's teeth rotten by the end of the summer. A new voice in the room. Dad's. He appeared out of nowhere, walking over to the table. He kissed Jeannie on the forehead, and then Ernie, and then Grandma. He leaned in and just grazed Ma's cheek with his lips, awkwardly. It was friendly, but not loving. It was better than what Grandpop got, which was no kiss at all. Your plate's on the counter, but wash your hands before you eat, Grandma said, low, as if Dad was still a little boy. Been out there fooling with that dirty dog. What you talking about, rotten teeth? Grandpop said on top of Grandma telling Dad to wash up. Please, you ate more sugar than any kid in history, and you still got pearly whites, don't you? Just one cavity your entire life. Dad didn't respond, just rinsed his hands in the kitchen sink. Grandpop started to pile his eggs on his toast, grits on top of that, topping it all off with a slice of bacon. Ma glanced at Dad uneasily while taking a spoonful of grits herself. Ernie, after watching Grandpop construct his breakfast tower, did the same thing. Repeat and repeat. That made Jeannie wonder if maybe Ernie got the idea of wearing sunglasses from Grandpa in the house from Grandpop too. Dad dried his hands on a towel hanging from the oven doors and stayed standing. There weren't enough chairs at the small table, but it didn't seem like he wanted to sit anyway. When Grandpop offered Dad his seat, Dad refused it and ate at the counter. So, Mama, he said, why don't you let me put some money into fixing up this place? The floor upstairs is all warped, and the planks must have shrunk. They're all spaced out. I can see right through to the living room. Don't need no fixin', son, Grandpop answered before Grandma could get a word out. My blood and sweat is in this house, built it with my own 2 hands. It's just getting old like me, but it's still standing, just like me. Grandpop lifted the breakfast tower into his mouth and smirked. And just like you. Dad rolled his eyes, and Grandma chimed in. Ernest, that's sweet, but you save that money for these boys. And Jamaica, okay? You fly out in what, 2 weeks, right? Yep, and I'm grateful that you could take the boys for so long. This was the only time we could get them down here, especially with Ernest having to pick up extra shifts so he could take the whole weeks off. Ma was saying apologetically when Grandma waved her apology away, her eyes bright. Oh, baby, it's no problem. Happy to have 'em, she insisted. Dad bit down on his bottom lip and glared at his father before turning back to his food. Jeannie, however, was fixated on Grandpa, on his face, especially on his shades. Every few bites, Jeannie would look up and see his own reflection in the sunglasses. Then he would look back down at his plate, embarrassed for staring. But he just couldn't help it. "What is it, Jeannie?" Grandpa asked at last. Tower demolished, plate clean. He took a slurp of his coffee from a white mug that said in black letters, "Virginia is for lovers," heart replacing all the V's. "Huh? What is it? You keep staring at me. I told you, we know each other now, after that handshake, so that means you can tell me anything." He took another slurp and swallowed. So spill. That's where we're going to pause for today, for Tuesday. We'll read more tomorrow on Wednesday. Some big things that I noticed when we were reading today that I'm wondering if you noticed too. I noticed that Dad doesn't seem to like Grandpa very much. He keeps glaring at him and being annoyed at him and wouldn't take his chair. And I noticed that we still don't know what's going on between the boys' parents yet, but it seems like it's pretty serious. I can't wait to read more with you tomorrow. Go ahead and do your vocab lesson and then do a journal entry, either handwritten on paper, or you can do it on a Google document and share it with me or attach it onto the Google Classroom. Be good, wash your hands, and do what your parents say. See you later.